1.03. That's the top performer on the screen right now, with Bajaj Auto just reporting those monthly sales numbers, is down almost 2% is what we're seeing, Abha.
Sreesankar joining us from Prabhudas, Lilladher. Shri, good morning. It's a big day today. What are you expecting from the governor?
Well, it's going to be a very interesting day, and our thoughts are that unless the government is pretty clear about containing the inflation, you probably may not see much changes in rates. Having said that, if you look at the 10-year bond yields, it's at about 8.06 or somewhere around that. So, which is clearly indicating that the market has already discounted the kind of a result which will come post the fall in inflation. To us, it's going to be clearly how the inflation is going to get curtailed going forward. What we expect is, if the fourth quarter is going to see a good amount of consumer demand happening, will this inflation which has been brought under control will remain so, or will it continue to increase? And the way the oil is going to determine the inflationary pressures that is going to be there going forward. It's not an easy decision, and we would also think that it's not going to be something that the governor would like to do a rate cut right now and probably go and increase it back in Jan-Feb in a short period of time.
All right, it really is all about the policy today, Priyank, as we head into opening trade. Just about 45 seconds left to go.
That's right, Abhan. Just a couple of seconds left for the market to kickstart live trading. As she was mentioning, markets more or less seem to be discounting a rate cut. The big question is, what if that rate cut doesn't really happen? That's what we'll discuss with Sri as well in a minute, in less than a couple of minutes. The Sensex and the Nifty in the pre-open indicating that the markets could start off a little bit on the softer side. You've got 37, 38 points down the Sensex, Nifty down by 20, 21 points is what we're seeing. Keep an eye out on the banking pack. It's been one of the best performing space in the last 2 odd months. The kind of rally up you've seen on a couple of these banking counters, that's where the focus is going to be. Kane is getting that little bit of excitement going today after the kind of rebound that we saw in terms of overnight cues for oil prices. So that again is another stock that's up. But a couple of these auto names, Hero, Tata Motors and Bajaj Auto will also be in focus. The opening, 70 odd points lower is what we're tracking right now on the Sensex. You got Bajaj Auto starting the day off with a little bit of a cut of almost 2.2% is what we're seeing. Tata Motors also down 0.5% is what we're seeing on opening. You got SBI, ICICI Bank all seeing some bit of cuts on opening is what we're seeing on the banking space as well. HDFC Bank down almost 1%. Hero Moto also, after a good rally yesterday, cooling off today, 2 to 0.3% lower. The oil and gas pack, little bit of a rebound on ONGC, 1% higher on that counter. RIL also seeing some bit of gains, 0.5% there. You've got some of the IT stocks, actually Infi and Wipro are trading a little bit on the softer side as well, is what we've seen. Infi is down 1% in terms of the way performance is playing out. Remember, that stock's actually gone X today, so that one's in focus. You're also seeing Dr. Reddy's down 1%. Let's get the Nifty going. Quickly mention that space as well. On the Nifty, you're currently down 13 to 14 points, 23 gaining, 24, 25, 26 stocks losing out. Let's get the names going. Kane's up 2.4, ONGC, Sun Pharma, HUL and Z Entertainment are a couple of the gainers. Some of the auto names taking a knock. Bajaj Auto, you got BPCL again seeing a little bit of a knock. Infi and DLF are on the weaker side. So that's the way it's playing out, Abha. 13 to 14 points lower, and as we've been saying, it's a little bit cautious ahead of policy.
Mid caps as well cautious, but specific stocks do continue to see some action. So we do have, for example, a Spark that's running up about 6 to 7% this morning. Shipping Corporation, that's the other one, about 4% gain coming in there. We've also got EIH looking good, up about 3% right now. Torrent Pharma, Bhushan Steel, some of the other movers there. Mindtree continuing to move. Gitanjali Gem continues its up move as well. So those are a few stocks on the upside. Downside this morning, we've got an AIA Engineering down about 4%. Motilal Oswal, Jet cooling off after yesterday's gains as well. So those are a few stocks that we're tracking for you on the downside as of now, but flat otherwise on the index as we speak. Shri, what are you tracking now going ahead in terms of Let's first take a look at some of the pockets of the market likely to be impacted today. Banking continues to be in focus. It has been in focus for several reasons. Of course, stock price activity, possible financial sector reforms, and today, of course, also because of the policy. What's your call on the banking pack right now?
We continue to believe that the banking sector will do very well should the economy recover. And our hope is that we are going to have a structural growth story in the domestic economy for the next few years. If that's the case, banking sector is one of the sectors which should continue to perform. And every pullback in that particular sector should be taken as an opportunity to have a relook and gain. That's number one. Having said that, preference is for the private sector banks who have relatively managed the stress in their assets better than the public sector banks, and that scenario will continue going forward. So, and the third one, probably an event-based news will or probably can happen to some of the old generation private sector banks, like a recent merger and takeover of ING with by Kotak is an example. So you'll actually probably see some kind of a premium or valuation gain coming in terms of some of the old generation private sector banks. That's going to be an event-based story. But these are all the things which will end up with the banking system per se. And we continue to remain optimistic on that sector.
Sri, the other interesting bit out here is when we talk about a couple of these, sectors and stocks that have been in focus, especially from the oil and gas pack. Interesting moves coming in over the last couple of days when we talk about some of these majors. I mean, oil prices clearly been the big talking point there. But how are you looking at some of these oil and gas majors, maybe Kane India, maybe ONGC, or in the OMC pack?
See, we don't at the moment have a coverage in those stocks.
Okay.
So, see, my personal view on these things are, so we don't have a house view on it. These stocks effectively in the OMC majors will continue to remain as event-based stories. If you continue to see oil prices correcting and they do not have a large amount of the subsidy issues coming up, they will be priced up. And should this subsidy issue continue to haunt them, they will not be favorites with the investors as a structural holding in the portfolios over a longer period of time. This will be trading oriented stocks in the portfolio for most of the long only funds. If that has to change, then you need to see a clear policy guideline of treating how these subsidies is going to come or to be treated by these oil companies. The problem that exists today, and it was earlier also, while the subsidies are reimbursed, these oil companies are forced to borrow for their working capital requirement, and the interest component for some of these companies is as high as 2,000 crores or even 3,000 crores, etc. And that component was not getting reimbursed by the government. So unless that changes considerably especially for the OMCs, I don't think these stocks being an integral part of the portfolio.
Okay, fair enough. Auto, Sri, what's looking attractive to you there? We've got a decent set of sales numbers coming out this time round.
You mean tractors? Okay.
Auto stocks, so four-wheelers and two-wheelers.
Yeah, well, we continue to remain optimistic on automobile as a sector, and we believe that that sector will continue to do well also. And lower numbers in terms of lower interest rates and the consumption and the pickup in demand is going to be much more. And should that recovery happen in the M and HCV segment as well, a much stronger recovery, then I think the stocks will continue to do much better as well.
All right, the auto pack clearly has been on the radar the last 2 days or so, considering the way the sales numbers have been panning out as well. But a quick mention on some of the mid-cap counters as well. Spark has been seeing some good activity today. It's up 11%. We've got that some letter coming in as well as far as one of its unit, the company unit is concerned. So that's probably the reason as why the counter has been in focus today. SCI is up almost 4%. Pfizer's getting some bit of traction. Couple of these mid-cap counters clearly active in the market today is what we're tracking as well. Sri, let's focus on the IT pack. I mean, that's been the other one with Infi going X today. Any thoughts in terms of how that sector could play out, let's say in 2015?
See, if you have looked into our topics commentary that we have been sending across as a part of the strategy as well, we have been optimistic on sectors like automobiles, financials, and you will invariably see that IT is also one of our sectors we like. The simple reason being, IT is as a sector is dependent upon US to a great extent. How the growth in the US markets are going to be there, and their growth continues to be robust, unlike in Europe, in the Eurozone. So with the demand environment being very strong, and our expectation is that in the current environment, we expect our currency to depreciate slightly, and that should be around 2.5 to 3% in a year, etc. So if you see those things going forward, then I don't see any reason why we should be moving away from IT. IT still continues to be one of the sectors that we like, and Infosys is among the large caps. Infosys, Mindtree, then among the mid caps you've got KPIT Systems, etc. are some of the good picks that we have.
What's looking good to you in the mid-cap space, Sri?
I did mention about KPIT Systems.
All right, anything else on your radar from the mid-cap basket?
That's one of the stocks that our analysts like in the mid-cap space.
Okay, some of the other themes that we were looking at, of course, were, for instance, aviation, jewelry stocks yesterday on the back of the easing of gold imports. Aviation was running up on the back of course, lower crude, but also a buzz of a possible deal in SpiceJet. Any of these pockets of the market looking interesting to you?
See, again, aviation as a sector, I don't think people have made money over a longer time, and as a structural story, as an integral part of the portfolios. But one needs to trade in that particular segment. If crude continues to remain low, and with well-managed aviation companies should be able to benefit. And I can't comment at this stage, why SpiceJet has moved up, because I have no clue why, except that with crude prices coming down, the raw material cost, fuel cost being the single largest component of the cost out there, some breathing space will be there for the companies in that sector, provided they don't reduce their fares further.
Would you be looking at some of these defensive names as well, Shri? I mean, you're looking at HUL quoting what, 816, 817 today on the screen. You've also got ITC, which has got that little bit of an overhang in terms of the way cigarettes news flow that we were tracking last week as well. But in the defensive pack, which one does really stand out? Some of these FMCG names, or is it going to be more on the pharma or the healthcare side?
See, in our topics, we have Britannia among the mid caps, which we like very well. And we continue to remain optimistic on Britannia. This is again from a price point of view, because the valuation in that space has become pretty expensive. I mean, I think the last look when I had, I think Pidilite was probably quoting at closer to 40 times earnings, etc. Now, these kind of valuations is what is probably something sometimes which forces you to take these stocks away from your topics. You will continue to see the benefit coming in terms of paint companies, in the FMCG, other FMCG companies, and ITC. ITC has been a huge underperformer. So the overhang, as you mentioned, about all those measures, what's going to impact on ITC in terms of their volumes going forward? And we should not forget that we are getting into a budget again in another 3 months. So will there be another dose of taxation on the cigarettes, and what is it going to impact into their volumes? And that's going to be the big question mark. Otherwise, even ITC looks good from a valuation perspective with the cash generation from their cigarette business.
All right, Shri, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much. Great chatting with you as always. Thanks so much for joining us today. All right, with that, that's